Awakened producer Ethan here. Today's episode is brought to you by Infant of Prague Catholic School. Since 1952, Infant of Prague Catholic School has provided parents with the opportunity to give their children an authentic Catholic education. Visit ilpschool.net to learn more about our expanded program, enrollment, and scholarship opportunities, and how you can support the growth of Catholic education in Eastern North Carolina through the Come Grow With Us campaign. All right, now to get on with the episode.
Hello and welcome to The Prodigal Life. I'm Deacon Harold and I'm joined by Nick and Ellen. And we are here to help you make a deeper, more intimate, more personal connection between your faith and your everyday life.
That's right, Deacon. And today we are interviewing someone who we all are friends with, and she's done incredible things. She's been a part of things that I guarantee you've heard of if you haven't heard of her herself. And Ellen, who is it and what is she doing?
We have Danielle Bean with us right now, and she is just a powerhouse. I mean, and her devotion to her family and her devotion to her Catholic faith walk is just, it's beautiful. And she's real. Like that's I think that's what I love the most about you, Danielle, is that you're real. And so you are now have a podcast called Girlfriends with goodcatholic.com, which is, you're going to tell us more about that. Yes. But this episode, that's on the second episode. The first episode is going to be about your testimony, like, you know, where you came from, how you got there, and what that looks like. So we're just going to kind of let you go. And then if we have questions, we'll ask you questions. And it's just, you know, we got to witness. So let's witness away.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here with you. And I like that you do this kind of testimony because, you know, in my mind, calling it testimony calls to mind like people with these great dramatic conversion stories, but everyone has a testimony. And I'm encouraged by that because I don't have a great dramatic conversion story. I was just an ordinary, everyday little girl growing up in a Catholic family. And I was blessed to have the childhood I had, to have the upbringing and the faith that I had. Me and my 8 siblings growing up here in New Hampshire. And, you know, there were times in my life where I would, you know, especially as I was writing in years when I was publishing magazines, I was always being inspired by these people with these dramatic conversion stories. And sometimes I had a little crisis of, you know, a moment of my own where I was like, well, I don't have that kind of dramatic thing that happened, you know, for me, like this awakening where I fell to my knees and, you know, I turned my life around. And I think there really is a place for telling that kind of a story as well, that, you know, we all have a testimony. So, you know, if you want to go back to my origin story, like I said, raised one of 9 kids in the Catholic faith. And I was just so blessed to be raised as I was, even though, you know, I was raised in a small town in New Hampshire, went to public schools. My parents didn't homeschool. We didn't do any of that like liturgical living and the kind of thing that's so popular these days. You know, a lot of times people will hear about my family and, you know, and that we're as adults all practicing the faith, and it's kind of unheard of, right? And so people say like, what did your parents do? How did they do that? And especially me, once I became a parent, I started asking myself that too, like, what did they do? Like, how did they do that? Like, why is my faith such an unquestionable part of who I am? Like, that's what we all want as parents, to impart the faith to our children in that at that level. And, you know, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it really wasn't a particular like magic formula, which is what we're all looking for, right? And it's something I've run into through the years, like especially once I was parenting and back in the days of blogging and sharing online and through the podcast, that, you know, we're all kind of looking for that magic formula. We all kind of just want to know, like, what is it? How do I share the faith? How do I share it in a deeply meaningful way with my children or with anybody that I meet? How do I have that kind of impact on other people? And, you know, when I look at it, there wasn't a magic formula in the way my parents raised me, but there was an openness that I think that many parents are lacking because we're fearful, because we think we don't have all the answers. But my parents very much raised me in an environment, and my siblings, where we could ask any question we wanted. You know, my dad was a philosophy professor at a Catholic college, a Benedictine school here in New Hampshire for 40 plus years, you know, so our home was a home of books. Our home was a home of learning. And our home was, looking back, this is the most important thing, a home where we could ask any question we wanted. And the church wasn't afraid of our questions. Our parents weren't afraid of our questions. And this was something that got communicated to us kids kind of in an organic way. And even to the point where, we would have these discussion groups as kids. I remember to us, it was normal. To the outside, it was very abnormal, right? My dad would assign us a book. We'd read the classics. We'd read Augustine. We'd read Aquinas. We'd read these great books. And on Sunday afternoons, we'd just gather around the dining room table and talk about it. And sometimes it turned into arguments. Sometimes I remember it getting very heated, and it wasn't always this glorious thing. And yet, what a gift it was to grow up in a home.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, where we could ask any question. And so I've tried my best to, along with my husband Dan, to emulate that kind of openness, because that's a natural part of being Catholic. Like, we have access to the truth. What a gift. And when I look back on it, that's the greatest gift my parents gave me, and the one that I want to give to my kids, and the one that I want to give to anybody is knowledge that there is a truth and that we can know it. What a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
Wow. That's awesome.
And so you have how many children?
I have 8 children. They range in age
children?
from 16. The baby is 16. Ouch. And our oldest is now 28.
Right. And they're all still practicing their faith?
They are. Yeah. Thanks be to God.
Wow.
That not a straight road to get there. Very bumpy at times, right? And
Sure.
that's just life. And I know that, from watching my own siblings and the different paths that people take. But, even myself, even though I didn't have some great conversion or reversion in my life, there were certainly times when I was choosing otherwise, right? But when I look back on that, I can see what a gift it was that in those moments where I was choosing otherwise from the faith that I was brought up in, I knew it, right? And that's become my prayer for my kids, that, like, of course, Lord, prevent them from sinning. But if they sin, let them know that it is wrong. Let them be aware of that.
Amen.
Because what a gift to just know it. And I never in my own mind doubted, I'm getting back there, and my siblings too.
Well, it's funny that you went there about yourself a moment ago, because I was actually about to ask, you talk about how you didn't have some crazy conversion story. You didn't have some kind of St. Paul or St. Augustine moment.
Right.
But exactly where you just started to go, I was going to ask you, considering that you kind of were always Catholic, what some challenges have been that you're willing to share that you have faced in your faith, in your life, even if it wasn't about, becoming an atheist or a Protestant and then reverting back to the faith or something. But what are some of the things? Because just putting on display, that is kind of what makes your testimony, right? That's part of what your faith path, your journey looks like uniquely. And for other people that are watching or listening that are like, I was always Catholic too. Like, why, kind of what you're getting at, like, there's a place for those stories. Can you kind of go a little bit deeper into some of those harder parts of it?
Yeah. I mean, saying I was always Catholic and I never actually strayed from the faith, it doesn't mean I never sinned, right? So you can, like, look back, and especially during those young adult years, when you're in college, when you're in high school, having friends groups that don't share your values, I certainly found myself making decisions that to this day, I'm not going to tell my parents, right? Although, I've been surprised as a parent myself. There seems to be like a time limit on these things. Like, after it's been like 5 years or something, my kids will just casually drop some information. I'll be like, "What? You did what? Like, what happened?"
Yeah.
Like, I
did that to my parents.
Yeah.
I did that to my parents. I did that. It was about 5 years after I moved out of the house.
It's
I was
okay
like,
to
well,
tell
I did
now.
this and I did that. And they were like, what?
I had a funny conversation with my mom about a year ago, and it wasn't like we were just in a group setting. I forget who else was there, but she said something in passing, like, "Yeah, Nikki never lied. Nick was always, very honest or whatever." And I'm like, "Well, actually, Mom, let me just fill you in on some stuff." And I just laid it out right there.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's so funny to me. It's like partly encouraging, but also discouraging, right? But like, I'd rather not know in the moment, right? If it's going to be happening anyway. But I'm also encouraged that, to see that my kids have gotten through to the other side. And I can see that in my own story. When one of my sons, who's now a dad himself, was, going through teenage years and the things, all the kinds of things, making choices we never would have wanted for him, really just struggling. I remember praying, because he was such a sweet kid, like the sweetest kid. And I remember remembering him when he was like 7 years old. And at the time he was probably like 16, 17, and just praying, like, Lord, get us through to the other side of this so we can find that kid again, so that we can, and I can know that from my own story, that I never changed who I was, right? And I never changed in some of those values that I fully embraced and that my parents instilled in me as a young person. But the world is filled with temptation, and kids are going to go astray. And I hear from parents all the time who are despairing about the fact that their young adult is outside the church or making these choices. And I always try to encourage them that their story isn't over yet. That foundation that you laid is still there, but then never to forget the power of prayer, the power of a praying parent, and just knowing that you can pray them through that and get them through to the other side of that. And, ultimately it's so important for us to remember, and I can know this from my own experience, like, they're not happy, when they're in that place where they're making these active choices that are against the values they were raised in, against their core being. Our goal as parents and even as evangelizers is to make the Catholic faith such a no-brainer part of who you are, part of your identity, a core part of who you are, something that you don't question.
Ethan here, interrupting today's episode with another word from today's sponsor, Infant of Prague Catholic School. Since 1952, Infant of Prague Catholic School has provided parents with the opportunity to give their children an authentic Catholic education, one which challenges them to grow academically and in virtue. Infant of Prague Catholic School, located in Jacksonville, North Carolina, near Camp Lejeune Marine Corps Base, has recently expanded and is now enrolling pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. Visit ilpschool.net to learn more about our expanded program, enrollment, and scholarship opportunities, and how you can support the growth of Catholic education in Eastern North Carolina through the Come Grow With Us campaign. Now, back to the episode.
And if you're going outside of that, and there's no guarantee you're not going outside of that or that your kids won't, it's not comfortable and you're unhappy and you're unbalanced. And you can know that at a very deep level, even as you are continuing to choose the wrong thing.
That's exactly right. And especially not only making it a part of their identity and making it part of like who they are, but making it a part of who they are in a context that helps them understand why it's so great for them. Like why it's valuable that they are that, because I think about my kids, and Alina and I have never ever sat down and told our kids, hey, here's what evangelization is, and let me explain to you that role that we have as baptized Christians, and like we need to help other people become Christian. We've never done that.
Right.
But every single time my kids are on a playground and they're encountering other kids or whatever, every single time they're like, hey, are you Catholic? And like, and that's only coming from a place of us instilling a sense of the value of being Catholic, because they want that now for everyone else.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting little microcosm of like what our hearts should be in the adult world. Why are we evangelizing? Is it so that we can feel good about ourselves when the RCIA classes are bigger? No, it's because it's the best. It's not just good news. It's the best news.
Right.
And it's the news that will heal wounds. It's the news that will introduce power into people's lives that they just wouldn't have known otherwise. And sorry. Just
I love that. I love that you and your wife are instilling that truth in your kids just through your example, right? Like you're not explicitly teaching these things. And that's such a large part of what we do when we share the faith. Like, let people see you struggle. When I look at my own, as I shared, as a beautiful upbringing in the faith, that didn't mean my parents didn't struggle, but I also saw them praying, and I saw them leaning on their Catholic faith, and I saw them referencing their Catholic faith as their source of encouragement and strength and inspiration. And that spoke volumes to me. I mentioned my dad as this philosophy professor. It's a great academic mind. I just admire him in so many ways, but seeing that man on his knees praying the rosary, like that was hugely impactful to me as a young adult, especially just seeing that he values this, and the world will tell you otherwise, but this is where this person is spending their time and attention.
Wow. Yeah, and you hit on something about that. You said that we have the truth, and so often what happens is when young people start seeking truth, they start seeking something, right? Like that's why I think atheism is so attractive, because they're looking for tangible, hands-on, empirical proof of things, right? And what they forget, and what we often forget when we're evangelizing or teaching children the faith, that truth is a person. Jesus Christ says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So truth is not a philosophical construct or an idea. It's a person. It's an intimate, personal, loving, and life-giving relationship. You can't teach that. You have to model that for your children. So that just like your father did, and just like and so many people whose kids leave the church. How do I get my kid back? How do I get my kid back? And they think they have to send them a catechism or Scott Hahn or something. But what they have to do is witness and share their story and experience of Christ in your life, because that's what they want to hear, that all this church stuff and all this sacrament stuff actually means something in their life every day. And that's why I think why youth groups sometimes aren't very effective. They fill them with pizza and soda when these kids have questions. They have deep, serious, like I said, when I was in Papua New Guinea a few months ago, I was speaking over 2,000 youth. And during the Q&A session, I mean, not me, I'm not surprised, but the organizers were surprised at the depth of the questions that the kids were asking. Like, these are deep, serious questions. These kids are thinking. They're looking at what's going on in the world and saying, I'm not getting any good answers here. Tell me why I should be Catholic. What does the church have to say about this?
Well, I just told you this morning on our way here that I was in Indiana yesterday for an event, and after I spoke, I opened it up for Q&A, and just like what you're saying, like the questions that I got were so beyond, like exactly what you said. The volunteers and the youth minister were all like, "Man, that's crazy that they're asking these things." Philosophical questions, like the deep stuff that really matters. And then one of the questions I got was from a grown-up. Asked this question. She asked, What should we be ready to tell someone? Give us 2 or 3 sentences to respond to someone who says, "Why are you Catholic? Why are you Christian? Why do you believe in Jesus? Blessed be his name." And what I said to that is kind of super connected to what we're talking about here is I'm not going to give you a cookie cutter answer for that question. You have to figure out, each one of us has to figure out what our reason for believing is. What is our testimony? What is it that we've experienced in our lives that compels us, that makes it no other option but to be a Catholic? Like I am in relationship, I'm in covenant with Jesus Christ, the King of the universe, because he did X, Y, and Z in my life, and I just cannot not be in relationship with him through the church. And so that's like, we all have to find that, we all have to find that, and you can find that even if you haven't had some crazy conversion experience, like what Danielle is getting at here. Yeah,
Right.
Absolutely.
It's hard. Yeah, I was just thinking. Now, I know you do your podcast, and I know you speak and everything else. How do you deal, or how do you come to people that might not have raised their children? Like, they didn't walk the walk. Yeah, they were Catholics, but they were not. They weren't visibly Catholic. Yeah, you know what I mean? The Catholics, the Easter and Christmas Catholics.
Yeah.
And whatever. And they now are struggling because their children are away, and they're trying to figure out, like you were asking, what do I do now? I mean, do you get questions like that? And how do you guide them on that path, since, you know what I mean? Because you have such a testimony.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's so hard, right? And I do hear from people all the time. I'll hear from people, whether it's I'm speaking somewhere or they get one of my books and they're like, I got this 20 years too late, that kind of thing. And that's rough. That is rough. But, I think all of us, no matter how you've parented your kids, like, we all have regrets and we've all fallen short, right? So I think starting with that level of humility and understanding too that this isn't something we do, right? We aren't raising our kids in the faith. Like, we aren't, of course, we're cooperating, right, with the Holy Spirit. We're not converting anybody. I remember years ago, I had the opportunity to meet Mark Shea, who's a great, Catholic apologist. And he told me that somebody at that conference had asked him, like, how many people have you converted? And he said, none. I've converted none, right? Like, the Holy Spirit has done it. And I'm, honored to be an instrument of the Holy Spirit, right? And that really stayed with me, because we can get caught up in this idea, like, I need to do it. I need to accomplish it. Even in our own spiritual lives, in our own faith lives, I can fall prey to that kind of like, this is a project and I'm going to get a good grade on this project of my spiritual life at the end of my lifetime, right? It's not like that. We're not doing it, right? It's about a relationship with the Lord. So how can we encourage others to find that relationship with the Lord? But then, never forgetting the power that we have to pray for our kids, to pray for other people in our lives who don't have faith, to be that quiet example of faith. You never know who's watching and who's learning from your example. But if it's your own kids, just remembering that the story isn't over yet. and that God is still working. God is outside of time, right? So he knows all about this situation that you're in. He knew all about it before you were even born, before your kids were born. He'll know all about it in the next generation. And so just having confidence in the goodness of God in that way, because, these desires for good things, God places them in our hearts. They're there for a reason.
Amen.
And he wants to fulfill those desires. So if those desires include sharing the faith with your kids, of course, God wants to accomplish that as well. So, be open to the ways in which he might want to use you to do that. But then also be open to the idea that maybe he's not going to use you at all in that story, right? And sometimes that's the most humbling thing as a parent. Like, somebody else is going to be the instrument that's going to speak to my child in a way that they can hear and understand. So be praying for that person to come into their lives as well.
That humility is so hard because we want so badly to fix something that we see that's broken.
Right.
And all the more so when it's someone that we love.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's such a hopeful answer that you gave too. Because I think a lot of parents feel guilty because, maybe they didn't have the faith passed on to them in a very powerful way, and they brought their kids to soccer, and they went to mass sometimes, and except when the game was on or whatever. And now they're older, they have more experience, they have a deeper encounter with Christ, and now the kids are out of the house. They blame themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Look what I did. This is my fault that my kids aren't practicing faith, and now they have to feel they have to do something to fix it.
Right.
But really, I think what you said was a really beautiful answer about prayer, fasting, sacrificing, and even sharing with your kids. Hey, guys, back then, this is how it was. But guess what? Let me tell you what Christ has done in my life since I started praying a rosary, since I started going to adoration, since your father and I started praying together, since, so they can actually see that, hey, wait a minute, redemption is possible. That, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, but hey, let me tell you what God has done for me. And we can't be reticent to share our faith like that.
Amen.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because we say, Jesus, I love you. You're the most important and special person in my life, but yet we don't want to tell anybody about it.
Yep.
Yeah, like if your son's gonna have a baby, you want to tell everybody, right?
Right.
Why don't we get that passion, enthusiasm about sharing our faith in Jesus? We're not trying to convert anybody. We're just saying, hey, it's like you walk up to somebody in the street, hey, let me tell you about Jesus. I mean, but when the opportunity presents itself, when people say, how'd you get to be like you? What is it about you? That's a door that's opening, that's God's giving you an opportunity to share about what Christ has done in your life. We can't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's true. I mean, I have like that miracle in my own life with my son. He's 30 years old. A year and a half ago, he said we should burn the church down and start all over again. He never was really into church. He never, you know what I mean? He was confirmed, and we did, we'd check the boxes and whatever. And then about a year ago, he started like, Mom, wow. And he started, and I just gave him a couple of things. And he fell in love with Deacon Harold's talks, and he fell in love with Matt Fradd's talks, and he started listening to them. And by the grace of God, August 5th, he and his bride got married in the Catholic Church, and he goes to Mass on Sundays.
That's
and
awesome.
He's going to confession, and and I'm just like, and I didn't have anything to do with that, but he came up to me once in the house right before he was getting married, right when he was in this transition. It was probably 6 months before, and he just walked up to me. It was weird. He came to visit, and he was like, Mom, is this why you're always so peaceful? And I was like, what? He goes, because I'm not the same person that I was. And of course, my children recognize that. But he was like, is that why you're always so peaceful? And and you seem like you're happy and everything else. Is it because of, basically the church? He didn't know how to word it exactly. And I was like, yeah. I said, I have the truth, Kenneth. I said, I have Christ. I said, I have my faith. I have the church. I have a support structure. I have what I need for the rest of this life and to hopefully go in, I want to see the face of God. And he was just and he just stood there. But it was he's never done anything like that in his whole life. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey. And God bless him. He has found his faith, and now he's trying to get his cousin back into church, and he's
wow.
he's like on fire,
that's
and like
great.
he loves Deacon Harold, and I'm just like, okie dokie. And Deacon officiated at the wedding. It was amazing. So yeah, so I mean, that's just a little bit about what we were talking about. You know, I'm not in charge. I had zero to do with that. It was just the Holy Spirit, and we just have to trust God. He's got a plan, like you said.
So hopeful.
Exactly what you said, Danielle.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that story.
So yeah, it's a great story. So, so how do people find you, and what do you want to tell them so they can find you and follow you?
Sure. I have a website, DanielleBean.com, so you can pretty much find out about all the different kinds of things that I'm involved in, my books and the podcast and whatnot. But my current venture is over at goodcatholic.com. We're really invested in building authentic Catholic community over there. So we've got podcasts, we've got live events. We're working on building a website where you can really have access to each other as we're kind of growing in our Catholic faith together. So really excited for what the future holds over there at goodcatholic.com.
Thank you, Danielle. And if all of our viewers, if you want to support us, Deacon Harold's going to tell you how you can support us so you can get more content like this.
Just go to theprodigallife.com, and on there you'll see an area where you can donate. And we have different levels of giving, and we've tied those levels of giving to the hierarchy of angels. So you become an angel investor in the Prodigal Life.
Amen. All righty. God bless you all. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for watching today's episode. Please like and subscribe, or even leave a comment. Before we end this episode, one last word from our sponsor, Infant of Prague Catholic School. Visit ilpschool.net to learn more about our expanded program, enrollment, and scholarship opportunities, and how you can support the growth of Catholic education in Eastern North Carolina through the Come Grow With Us campaign.